Harleen issue 2 by Stjepan Šejić. Yeah, I mean, there's so many goddamn pages. It feels weird to summarize the whole thing, so I'm just going to, I'm just going to dive in. Just going to dive in right at the start. And she's talking to Joker. She's calling him Mr. J. That's kind of where we ended last time. And I will say this: very early in this issue, I said, "Well, this issue has to end with her smelling at him." Like that became very clear early on. That has to be.
It's clear that's what the theme of this issue was.
But we do get a scene from later on. So I mean, obviously the narration, the dialogue that's happening over the top of it is just obviously them talking to each other, but it's Joker talking about everyone being a monster deep down. Everyone's secretly violent, and Gotham just lets people unleash it.
Classic standard Joker speech in a way that becomes very smart later on.
Yes, but the whole thing here is that we find out this is from later because Harley's in it. We have Joker's at gunpoint and Harley, and we get a full page, well, almost full page spread of Harley in costume, saying "Don't touch my pudding." So obviously for this
Šejic's in costume Harley is amazing looking.
Yeah, for the sake of Šejic's art, it's a nice thing to see. But I mean, this issue as it goes on, it's like she's struggling. She's drinking a lot of booze. She's struggling with dealing with the idea that she's not really getting anywhere. But also this idea that what if the Joker's right? Because her whole thesis was that psychopaths and sociopaths are created because they lack the ability to feel empathy. Which I mentioned that because I think it becomes important again towards the end. Yeah. But and it's like all these villains exist, and she's not really getting anywhere. And she's becoming kind of obsessed in an unhealthy way. But of course she hears from her employer or whatever it is to check the news about Harvey Dent, and we find out that the things happen to Harvey. Maroni's throwing the acid in his face, and we see this play out on TV,
and it's horrifying.
Oh yeah, it looks great. He definitely draws a Dark Knight version of Two-Face.
He does, yeah.
With the really brutal sort of
the hole in the cheek always nails it.
Yeah, the gore and whatnot, and we get these vigilantes who
are in very Deathstroke looking masks.
Well, I think it's meant to represent Two-Face, not Deathstroke.
Yeah, I know, but I wanted to point out.
Yeah, and they actually kill Maroni on TV. Like they execute him and say this is for Harvey Dent. This is to get real justice, vigilantism, blah blah. And we get a great big 2-page spread of Batman and Robin storming in and like taking these vigilantes out because obviously they're killers and they.
I love the wraparound effect of this. It with the way the Batmobile curves and the light flashes, it has a real kind of lens effect. I think it's accentuated by the curving of the panels that are there. It feels kind of really wide in scope because of that.
Yeah, no, really, really good. And we see like the police then have a rough time because now they're all suspecting because one thing we know about these vigilantes is they're all cops. Like these are cops who are putting on masks. We just don't know what cops it is. And Harley had set up interviews with police officers. She wanted to go in and second guesses whether or not she should, but ultimately she's getting nowhere with the criminals, so she kind of has to. And she meets with Gordon, so we get scenes with Gordon and Harley talking, and Gordon's receptive enough to her.
He's just like, hey, can you just not do it right now? This is kind of a bad time with all this going on.
Yeah, it's a bad time, and she ultimately requests that she wants to speak to Batman. And, it's just this interesting scene. It's actually maybe my favourite page in the book, actually, when the Batman arrives, because she waits around for a long time. She's told to wait until nighttime.
It's got a great time passing effect where in the sense that at one point Gunn just comes up to her and she snaps out of it, and because at the top of the page is kind of her just staring off, and you really feel like she's just been sat there for hours, not even thinking anymore. Yeah,
and it's mostly just through the shape of the panels more than anything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe my favorite page is actually Batman standing on top of the bat signal when he arrives.
Oh, it's so good. The way the light beams kind of go around Gordon.
Yeah, really, really nice. And Harley wants to talk to him, and she's like, do you think they can be helped? She's basically trying to ask, like, why don't you kill them? Like, you clearly think they can be helped. So that maybe reinforces her belief that she can do something with them, that there's hope. And it's like, so you think that there's hope for them? And he says, I hope there is, which is a different answer. It's not that he thinks there is hope, he just hopes that there is hope.
Yeah.
As bizarre as that sounds, very Batman answer.
It's a lot more cynical, even though it's hopeful.
Yes, which is Batman pretty much in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Um, and she goes back to Arkham, and she's talking to the guards and whatever. She goes to see Joker, and this is kind of where the key thing in the issue happens that sets up the ending, is where he does actually open up just a little bit. He opens up just a little bit, and she's even saying in her narration that, like, because of the way he's speaking, because of the way he's kind of uh,
He has these moments of clarity.
yeah, and she says I'd almost admire him, basically, is kind of thing. But he kind of admits, because she asks why didn't you kill me, that night. And he talks about how he has two things that he really loves to see on someone's face. He has two things, and that is the look of fear of death, the absolute terror.
Abject horror was the phrase he used,
and also
an honest smile.
An honest smile. And they very rarely cross over, but when he saw terror in her face, he wanted to see her smile. And it's kind of the first time he kind of flirts with her, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. And it's that moment of, sincerity. Like, there are these moments of sincerity from the Joker. And then immediately he's back to putting on the performance. He's like, well, maybe my gun was just out of bullets. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's a great take on Joker here, actually.
No, it's good. So it kind of ends there, and this is kind of in her shock. I love her, like, her shocked face when he says, "I wouldn't mind seeing her smile." That first moment of, like, he just said something positive about me. Like, he just.
It's like, how do you take that?
Yeah. And this is something she can't help but think about. She's, like, lying in bed at night. She can't, like, get this out of her head, this idea that he wants to see her smile. And she's having these nightmares, about him being prosecuted. And, we see that he is getting files. He's paying off a guard to, like, get files from Doctor Strange's office or whatever.
Yeah.
Possibly about her, who knows. But she has this, and another scene that I love is that she's standing in front of the mirror, and she sort of smiles at the mirror, and she's looking at herself. She's putting her hair back, and she catches herself basically thinking that Joker thought she was too good looking to die, and she feels like almost a bit of ego, and then realizes what she's thinking, and kind of feels like ashamed,
horrified
and
with
disgusted.
herself,
yeah, like, what the hell am I doing? She basically was enjoying a compliment from a madman, and and I was really wondering at the start of this, because I really liked issue 1, but it's like, how do you successfully go down the path at a reasonable rate, showing her, like, kind of turn, and showing the sort of the seeds come in. And I think this issue actually does it surprisingly well, because after this she reacts kind of naturally. She's so horrified by the thought that she was kind of not turned on or whatever by this, but just, like, excited.
But it felt good.
Yeah, it felt good. Yeah, but basically just that. It felt nice to get the compliment. That she avoids them. She's like, no, I'll interview the rest. I'll interview Croc. I'll interview Riddler. I'll interview whoever else. I won't go back to Joker. And time passes, and she talks about how she's just kind of bored. I laughed.
She goes to see Ivy for the first time.
Yeah, I laughed at her in the parka when she goes to see Freeze.
Yeah, that was good.
Gave me a chuckle. But yeah, she has this scene with Ivy. And
Ivy's like, oh, thanks for using a recorder and not taking notes. Obviously, thinking, oh, she's done her research. She doesn't want to see the dead tree in front of her. And in the narration, it's just like, shit, yeah, I do cross my mind.
Yeah, but this is the thing, though, is that Ivy can tell that she's thinking about someone. She can tell that her hormones are in gear. And this obviously embarrasses her. And she's like, oh, time to go. Sorry. And again, she's beating herself up. She's like, no, I can't get him out of my mind. She can't stop thinking about him. And it's just really good. And she actually sneaks in
to watch him sleep.
And she sees all these scars on his back, and it's almost like she feels sympathy. And
yeah, he says, no, he's not scary, just scarred.
Yeah, it really it does a good job. I mean, it cuts to Two-Face. He's been in a coma or Harvey, I should say Harvey. He's not really Two-Face yet, I suppose.
Yeah,
but
he's been in induced coma.
Induced coma for a month, and he's got bandages on down half of his body, as you'd expect. And he's waking up. I love the POV panels, actually.
Yeah, because they don't have his eye covered up straight away. So you kind of see, one eye. It's kind of normal, hazy at first. The white light's coming in, and the other eye's all just tinted red and blurry.
Yeah, it's kind of that thing where you sort of squint your eyes at a light and look at it. You sort of
Yeah.
you see it coming through, but it's not. Great. But anyway, so Harvey's like, no, we're gonna have a press conference. I need to like talk to the public and talk about these vigilantes and everything else and whatever. And then we get this thing where we hear basically the Two-Face voice start to talk to him.
Yeah.
And it kind of and I love him peeking under the bandages what is the POV shot, one side is blurry and he doesn't see his whole face, he just looks at like around his eye just a little bit,
just enough to see, and I think Session nails the terror on his face here. He's terrified of himself.
yeah. And he starts like hearing different things from people, like imagining them saying something like harsh, the Two-Face kind of way.
Yeah.
And so what's great about this, obviously, it's like, why are we cutting to Two-Face? It's because it plays into what Harley's going through in this issue, where she's worried that, yes, everyone in Gotham does have violence and madness underneath, and it's all just waiting to come out. So seeing Harvey Dent, someone who she met in issue 1, who is this upstanding guy who really believes in what he's doing and has really felt about his ways, she sees him break down live on TV. He's doing this press conference, and he starts to go into Two-Face mode, and he says, "Oh, these vigilantes are damned heroes," and he starts like screaming, and he rips off his bandages.
Can we talk about the fantastic lettering change here?
Sure, yeah.
Talk about lettering that much, but the clear shift to this completely different font for Two-Face versus Harvey.
It's also got this really scraggly effect around the edge of the bubble.
It does. It's great, and there's a lot of extra. Instead of just having the slightly bold words, for emphasis that you might get normally, even as Harvey. As Two-Face, they start off like that, and they get bigger and bigger as they go on. As he gets more animated, they kind of break out of the bubbles entirely, and they're not even in straight lines by the end of these kind of outbursts. Yeah, it's fantastic.
And the art really emphasizes like how this relates to Harley's story, because you sort of see a panel where it's like he's talking directly to Harley. It's like a sort of profile shot, and you can see the Joker's face behind Two-Face, as if that's kind of, and it's not Joker's influence per se, but it's what Joker was talking about. Like, here it is, here's the evil side coming out. We all have it. So, no, really good. So she's still upset. She keeps thinking about him. I think that was the best thing I think this issue does, is that it really plays this idea. It really comes across that he's slowly getting under her skin in a way that she just can't get him out of her head. And it's not like Killer Smile, where it's like this crazy sort of blackouts and like fears.
No, this is slower and more methodical. John, this is what I'll mention, how I really appreciate this is one issue here, and because I talk about this is 3 issues worth of content, and they could have gone, well, we'll just split into 3 issues and get triple the money, right? But it is
not
so
triple. They're charging
Oh, they're charging 8 for it, so I mean, they'd probably charge. All right, they'd get an extra issue's worth out of it, I suppose. But it's very clearly thematically all one thing. It builds. It has such a methodical pace to it that it does read. It does read as one standalone issue as part of this larger story.
No, it does. It does. She has this idea. She's got something she wants to ask him here. Get into this final scene of the book,
because she realizes that no one else actually asked him this question.
Yeah, it's basically, do you have any guilt or feel remorse about anyone you've killed? And he gets surprisingly honest, says, yeah, well, at first maybe I did a little bit, but like...
One of the first things you learn in Gotham is to kill the empathy.
Yes, and I love that moment, because as soon as he says the word empathy, it's the end of a page, and it's bolded, of course, right?
Yeah.
Like, she's like, wait, what? And the look of shock on her face. Basically, and this is the great thing, we know he read like a file on her, right?
Maybe her thesis.
Maybe her thesis. He is basically using the word that will make her think that like she's getting something from somewhere. Like he's going to prove her idea, and this is going to make them connect. This is manipulation. And what's beautiful about this is that up until this point, you could argue that Joker, he's crazy, but he's not necessarily manipulating her yet. Like he is, maybe he does genuinely feel something. Maybe there is more to just.
And then you see this, and you're like, oh, he's playing her.
And this is the moment where you're like, no, there's manipulation going on here. It's not just, whatever it seemed like before. But I love her reaction to this. This is the first breadcrumb of like, hey, I might be right. And
she sits bolt upright immediately.
And it's that thrill, that rush of like, this might prove I'm right. and it leans her in. And I love the page after, where she's dressed as Red Riding Hood and there's like a big bad wolf behind her. And it's like, she says, my grandma, what fascinating mental issues you have. Like, I love the, she's debating like the appeal of him here, like the idea that
she's so aware that in hindsight she's so aware of what happened.
Yeah, because this is a Harley in present day who's narrating this, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's she's aware of like him luring her into the trap, like.
Yeah.
And this is great stuff. But he wants to ask her a question. And it kind of flips the image again, where now she's in the change in the straitjacket and he's wearing like a lab coat and whatever.
Yeah.
How often do you watch me sleep? And it's like, wait, he knows. He knows that I've been doing. Like, oh, only one time, and I know it's the scars, and he's like, that's nothing, whatever. But
she talks about how she's so caught up, so excited now, and caught off guard by these comments that she just gets blunt. She stops being subtle like she's supposed to be, like she knows she should be. She just gets blunt and kind of just goes for it, and doesn't go so well for her.
And he basically, again, he keeps playing her by saying that he's let her in more, he's opening up more, perhaps just because, because he wanted her to smile, and he felt like he wanted to let her in. And again, it feels like manipulation here. It feels like he's really drawing her in.
And then it gets to the end of this sequence where he's like, and he kind of goes, "Hey, I am actively manipulating you. You're just like the others. You just want to write a book or an article or maybe a thesis. You're just like the others." And that's when she screams, "No, it's not like that." And she stands up and she's yelling, and he's got she's completely got now at this point.
Yeah, because he's forcing her to prove her honesty, because he said that, like, because that's what he was saying at first, is that he liked her honesty. It was all about the honest smile, and now he's accusing her of not being honest. And at this point now, she cares enough about him. He's in her head enough that she feels the need, the absolute like not just desire, but the absolute necessity to prove to him. She has to prove to him that this is genuine. So she takes turns off the security camera, walks over, and she starts taking off his straitjacket. And he gets up, he walks over, and she's not even looking at him. She's looking against the wall, and it's, and she admits she cares about him, and it scares her that she cares about him. And the final page is him holding her, and she's smiling, and she's like, "Call me Harley," and he's like, "Harley Quinn, I like that." And there you go. That's
the last thing she talks about. She had a dream of a long, winding road of bats and of a giant beast, which I believe was the opening of the first issue.
It was, yeah. So now it ends with her smiling, and as soon as he brought up the smile and wanted to see her smile, a third halfway through, I was like, well, that's how this issue has to end. It has to end with her smiling for the first time with him. So I am fascinated by how the third issue is going to play out. Will it end with her first kill? Will it end with her, I don't know, like, putting on the costume?
Yeah, I have no idea how far this is taking it. We might get a little bit from the end of the narrating Harley, wherever that is. She seems like she's in a post-Joker place now at that point of the way she's narrating this. She's aware of the manipulation. So we might get a little, like, an epilogue with that. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I could see that. But this was fantastic again. I think even talking about it, I like it. I think I did this with the first issue, actually. I think the first issue got better after I talked about it.
Yeah.
And I think this issue does the same thing. The thematic stuff with Two-Face is really good. I feel like we'll see Two-Face again next issue, and it'll tie in again. But it's been really nicely kind of there. It's nice. It's a bit of Bat mythology that ties it into the timeline, but also
it is. I mean, I can say with pretty much confidence now that this is now going to be the definitive Harley Quinn origin that at least I always think of. In the comics. Okay. Sure, that you can think of a stripped down version whenever they reference it, but when I'm thinking of the full story, it's going to be this.
Yeah. So that's Harleen. It's fantastic. And obviously, the art is drop dead gorgeous from start to finish. We mentioned a couple of panels across the way, but
we almost don't even mention it anymore.
It's so expressive,
utterly flawless.
It's so expressive. The coloring's so on point. It has a really distinct, consistent look to it. And I am so down for more Black Label books by Šejić, whatever he wants to do. Do it.
Yeah, we know he wants to write and draw, and after this, let him write whatever the hell he wants.
Go for it. Yes. So what are you giving it?
9.5.
That's fair. I think issue 1. I think you and Matt gave it a 10, and I gave it a 9.5.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 9.5 again. I'm going to be consistent with my first. For me, I think.
I think this is just slightly less focused because the Two-Face stuff, while all very good and thematically all ties in, it's just slightly more away from Harley than we ever got in the first issue. So it feels, just for a couple of pages at one point, like, okay, we're going down this route. And obviously it all comes back round, and I understand it all. But I'm just knocking off a half point for that alone. But still love it.
Matt gave it a 9.5. Not as exciting as the first issue, but fantastic nonetheless. I'm a sucker for a Two-Face origin. Those pages were awesome, as was all the stuff with the Arkham inmates. The story descends into more tragedy and is making me feel things. And Matt doesn't like feeling things. As
he really does.